Hi, Stitchers. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, where we share conversations about Palestinian embroidery. I'm Amani here with my co-host Lena, chatting with talented embroiderers and artists, sharing their stories, inspirations, and the cultural significance behind their work.
On today's episode, we are chatting with Farah, a Tatreez artist, crafter, poet, and graphic designer. Welcome to Tatreez Talk, Farah.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello. We are so excited to have you. So Farah, we always kick off the episode by asking about you and your family's connection to Palestine.
Sure. Okay, so I'm from Tul Karam, or the Tul Karam area. I'm from a tiny little village called Kur. It's literally just my family. There's no one else but the JUC family there. Um, and I mean, my family, like overall, it's a very big family. We're spread out through the Tul Karam region. And this is all on my father's side. My mom is white American. So my dad's side of the family, they're spread out throughout the Tulkarm region, which meant that in 1948, our family was split in two. So my grandmother, Allah yarhamha, was like separated from her siblings and her side of the family. They were in Jaljulia, which is now part of the 48, which yeah, the occupied territories in 48. And so until 1967, she had zero contact with them, right? Like they couldn't visit each other. They didn't have like phones that they could call each other on. There was no mail. There's nothing. Um, so in the War of 1967, or the assault on the West Bank in 1967, my grandfather was working in Kuwait at the time. My dad was 4 years old, and they were separated again, right? So during that time, anyone who's outside of Palestine had no contact with people inside. So like my aunt and my uncle, who are a bit older, were studying in Egypt, right? They also, like all the Palestinian students in Egypt, were essentially in a state of mourning because they couldn't contact their family. They didn't know if they were alive or anything for, I think, a few months, from what I remember. Um, so long story short, I could say all kinds of things about what happened in 1967, but they, my family had to flee from the Tulkarem like city to our hometown village of Kur because that was a little bit more inland, a little bit, it's like on a hill, so it's a little bit safer. That's what they were hoping. I will share one story from that because I had a group of great aunts who they were seamstresses. They had a sewing business. They'd make a thwab. Each one kind of had her role. And so one of them was with my grandmother, Allah yarhamha, and the kids at the time. And as they were running through the fields, because they're this all by foot, she, for some reason, had her sewing scissors with her. Nothing like they didn't bring anything, right? Like they left everything in the house and went running, but she had her sewing scissors in her pocket. My dad, being 4 years old, really wanted a cucumber because they were running through a field of cucumbers. And he was like, "Biddi khiyara, biddi khiyara." And my grandmother like was not having it. She was like, absolutely not. But my great aunt, Allah yarhamha, was like she didn't have any kids, and she was like, I'll get you a khiyara, I'll get you a cucumber. And she peeled that cucumber too, like as they were running with her sewing scissors. So I like to mention that because there is some of that history of like sewing, and I'm sure Tatreez within my family, but I was cut off from that because eventually, like my family did leave in 1967,
That's such a
and
beautiful story
yeah.
to have, like in the chaos of everything that
Yes.
happened. Like that is a really beautiful story to have.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing that one.
Yes. My aunt loves sharing it. She was like 10 years old at the time. Just like the picture of like this Palestinian woman peeling a cucumber with her scissors while running, like with bombs dropping, right? Like,
Yeah.
but I love that story so much. Even though like in the moment, I'm sure it was not fun. It was horrible,
Yeah.
but in retrospect, it's such a wild image.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So did you grew up here in diaspora, correct?
Yes, so I grew up between the US and the UAE. So I was born in the US, moved to the UAE for 7 years, and then came back to the US and have been there since then, been here since then.
And
And have you
actually,
had, oh, sorry, go ahead, Lena.
no, I was just gonna say, and actually, the reason I met Farah is because she knows my husband's family very well in Missouri. And the other connection is she's far unsure, but somehow related to Sarah from Dira,
I was
right?
gonna
Yes, we're the
ask.
same
Same,
family.
yeah,
Yeah.
same
I don't know
family.
like the exact like connection on the family tree, but like same
Yeah,
family.
I was gonna
yeah,
ask
Yeah.
because of the last name. So,
Yeah.
okay.
small world.
Yeah, seriously. Well, okay, were you able to go to Palestine growing up, or have you gone back as an adult? What was that like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I only got to go to Palestine once as a child. So I was like 14, I think, 13 or 14. And that was with my family. So we stayed with our family in Jaljulia. Um, and we were able to go to Tulkarem and Kur um, for like a brief visit through all the checkpoints and all the things. It really should only be like a 10, 15-minute drive, but I think it took like an hour at least, if not more. Um, we visited other parts of Palestine as well. Like we got to go to Al-Quds and Akka and I can't remember where else we went, but it was a very short trip. It was very, very special to be able to do that, even with some of the issues like at the border or with the checkpoints and all of that, just getting to meet that side of my family that I had never met before, right? Um, and I mean, I had a little journal and I did like write all kinds of things, whatever I thought was important as a 14-year-old, which is very different than what I would have thought was important now. Um, but as an adult, I went in 2017 with Eyewitness Palestine. They rebranded, since they weren't Eyewitness Palestine at the time, they are now. Um, so that was more of like an interfaith trip. So it was like also in like cooperation with AMP, like American Muslims for Palestine, JVP, and the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship. So it was basically a group of Muslims, Christians, and Jews who were advocating for Palestine and wanting to connect a little bit more deeply with Palestinians on the ground, especially like activists. So we went all over, like within the span of 10 days. Um, at that time, like this I remember very vividly, like being detained at the border, like for 5 hours. I think they only questioned me for maybe 20, 30 minutes, but I was just sitting there, right? Like, and 5 hours really compared to other people is not that long. But alhamdulillah, I was able to get through and visit. But that was the last time I was able to go to Palestine. I tried again in 2019, and I knew there was a higher risk of me being turned away at that point. They had just issued like the law around like their anti-BDS supporter, whatever thing. And not that there is that much about me online, to be honest, but I still knew like there's always that risk, especially traveling alone. Um, so I went through Jordan and they questioned me again. I think it was like 5 or 6 hours. And this time it was a lot more questioning by different people. They had like three people questioning, like interrogating me. And then they sent me to like the higher up. And once they sent me to the higher up guy who was like, why are you lying? Like, where did you go? All of this, wanting all of this information. And then he took my fingerprints. I was like, okay, this is it. I'm not getting in. So they let me wait some more and eventually like gave me back my passport. We're like, we're not letting you through, like we're sending you back. And so technically, like usually like the bans are like 5 or 10 years when you're rejected, but they can also just like, Palestinians who are detained, they can arbitrarily extend that ban or that detention. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if I will try to go back anytime soon. I don't know if I have the stomach for it.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and I
Farah,
know
I
right
don't
now it's even
know.
worse.
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about this because I had a very similar experience.
Really.
Yeah, so I tried to go by myself in 20, I want to say I tried to go by myself in 2018,
Mm.
or 2017. No, sorry. I tried to go again by myself in 2014, and I was visiting a friend
Mm,
in Palestine, and they turned me away. And what they told me was that I was being rejected, but I could try again the next day if I really wanted
hmm
to. I didn't have enough time, so I couldn't try again that time, but I went again in 2017 with my teta, and my teta she really, I mean, she was like, I need my granddaughter. She needs to take me to Nablus. Like, I can't get there by myself, all this stuff. And they were like, no, you like she's banned. That's when they told me I was banned. And
mm,
they told me that it was for 8 years. This was 20, so 8 years would have been 2022 as
hmm
like from the first time that I got denied or whatever. But I just went again in October of 2024 with my husband and they let me in. Now
Wow.
it's like 100% dependent on who you get. It's 100%
Yeah,
dependent on their moods.
totally.
And honestly, I think it really made a difference that I went with my husband.
hmm
Because I tried going on my, I think it's the when you go by yourself, it's like, they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? They think you're
Yeah.
gonna,
Yeah.
they have this obsession of you getting married and having kids because they have like this fear of Palestinians
Dead.
overpop. No, it's actually a thing. It's actually a
Yeah.
thing. Like they talk about it. And so all that to say, you should keep trying. I know like now is
Yeah.
it's a little bit different in terms of like the situation in Philistine. Like I think that's a little bit
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
but like keep trying because oh my God,
I know it's so important
it's
that
so
we keep
important.
trying because they that arbitrariness of like they it depends on their mood. Like, are they in a fight with their girlfriend? Like, what did they
Yeah,
have for breakfast?
Hmm.
literally,
Like,
yeah.
that's literally all it is. And that like randomness is what they want people to be afraid to visit. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I
Hmm.
always tell people like, go visit. For me, I'm just like, I need some time to recover
Yeah, no, no,
before I'm
and I
ready to
That's
like go
real.
through the
100%.
emotional turmoil again.
It's
Yeah.
humiliating. Getting
Yeah.
turned away is so and I had to go through it twice.
Yeah.
And every
Yeah.
time the Jordanians are like, what happened? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, and then they take you back. And I'm just like, oh, it's really humiliating. It's a terrible feeling.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky that the Jordanians that were working that day were really nice to me.
Yeah.
Because they were like, how did you not get through? Don't you have an American passport? Like they were
Yeah.
like astounded that it was not let through. I'm like, don't you work here every day?
I was just gonna say, how are they shocked by this? Like, come on,
Yeah.
But they
bro.
were, I don't know. And like once I got to the Jordanian border, whoever, like the military guy that was working there gave me some baklawa and some
Oh,
water. And
okay.
it
That's
was
nice.
like, I think I probably looked like I was ready to like burst into tears. And he was like, here you go. Here's some baklawa.
Oh.
Here's some water. Please don't cry.
Oh man, yeah, I definitely bawled my eyes out.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that
definitely I
is
help
kind
it
of
in.
that's the
Yeah.
getting taking us to the perfect segue of your Tatreez journey and where that started. Because, you grew up in diaspora, but you also
Mhm.
grew up, both in the US and you mentioned growing up in the UAE. You grew up around this Palestinian culture. So where was Tatreez in your life? Like, when did you learn it? What was your relationship to Tatreez growing up?
Yeah, so growing up, we were always surrounded by tortillas, right? Like I had this really cute little thobe that my aunt, like Hamti, got for me when I was really young, like a toddler. Think I'm sure we still have it somewhere, but it was this cute little like white shiny like thobe with some tortillas on it, which my sister also wore at some point. And there is this like I have like this little tradition with my aunt who like anytime like I would visit, even now, like she'll take me out to shop for a thobe. Um, so that was something that I grew up with that I like really appreciate even more now as an adult.
Hmm.
That I had someone who would like she'd be the one to like know like okay, this one's good, this one's not good. Like
Yeah.
she was the one to go with. And I always wanted to learn how to do Tatreez, but I didn't have anyone close to me that I could ask, right? Or that knew how to do it. And this is also in part because I am from Tulkarem and the Tulkarem, Nablus, Jenin area, we don't have a lot of Tatreez. And like we actually specifically have like this saying, which is قلة الشغل بتعلم التطريز, which is like a lack of work teaches you embroidery. So it's kind of like this dismissive attitude towards tatreez even, right? Like it's like, oh, these like rich women or the women who are from merchant families who have the time for this, like from like Yafa, for example, right? Um, so there was very much like this, I don't know, this attitude of like, why do you need to learn Tatreez? Like, we have better things to be doing. Like, women were usually
Hmm.
working in the fields. But that was actually told to my aunt. This is another aunt who wanted to learn Tatreez. She shared this with me like more recently once I started learning to do Tatreez. She was like, oh, I always wanted to learn, but I was just told like the saying, right? Like, what do you need Tatreez for? So I actually learned from Wafa Ghanem from Tatreez and Tea in 2020. I had met her through my work at Launch Good, coaching her campaign for the second edition of her book. And I had wanted to attend one of the in-person classes because I was in New York at the time and I just couldn't afford it because it was really expensive and I had like basically nothing. Um, and then COVID hit and she started teaching the classes online. And my sister was like, hey, she's teaching like on Instagram Live. And then she started doing like the Zoom calls. And I did it with my sister. And I think my mother did at least one of the workshops as well. Um, and then my Tatreez journey kind of took off from there because I did actually like I've always been into crafting. I knew how to crochet. I learned some like basic like hand sewing and quilting and even like machine sewing like clothing and all of that from my grandma on my mom's side of the family because she was a quilter and she grew up like she was born in 1930. She grew up sewing her own clothes. So I learned a lot from her. I just didn't have the technique for Tatreez, right? Like I knew some basic like Western embroidery. Um, but I had never learned the technique for Tatreez. I had tried. I honestly like tried to do it myself. Like just like I know it's X's. And I could see like some of the motifs like on dresses and things like or like other random embroidered things we had at home, but I couldn't figure out how to get things to line up correctly, right? Or I didn't realize
Mm.
that like if two X's are next to each other, they need to share the same holes, right? Like
Mm.
really
Yeah.
Mhm.
basic things I just didn't know, and I didn't have any way to find this information, which alhamdulillah now there's so many resources
Yeah.
available
Seriously.
online, in person, just everywhere. But at the time there was just nothing. So I was just trying to like DIY it.
Yep.
It did not go well. Um, so yeah, I started in 2020 and just yeah, took off from there. My sister, I think, ended up doing a lot more because I started getting busy with work. And so like she was learning like the Tahiri stitch. She did like a whole like a bit like the chest panel on a shirt. And so like in that like period of time where I wasn't doing a lot of Tatreez, I would sometimes ask her like, oh, how are you doing this? Like and trying to like learn from her and she was learning from Wafat. So either way, like it goes back to Wafat.
It's a
And
community effort.
yes. Um, so yeah, like since 2020, I was just doing Tatreez on and off here and there as a hobby. Um, and it wasn't until like the last year or so that I started doing more Tatreez, in part because of what is happening in Palestine and also because I had quit my job and I had more time. And so I was learning a lot more, and I finally opened the book that what's it called? Like the 17 Stitches for
Mm.
Palestine, which I had
Yeah.
also like found out about through Launch Good because I was working there at the time and they fundraised for it through
Oh,
there.
cool.
That's
So I
awesome.
had gotten it like very early on and I just didn't have the time to open it and try and like learn some of the stitches until more recently.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So then you also created a brand called Art Colored Glasses,
Yes.
which kind of ties into what you're doing with Tatreez. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the brand, what you offer there? Where did the name come from? Would love to hear all the details about Art Colored Glasses.
For sure. So art colored glasses has been my handle for like years and years and years. And I decided to just lean into it. I'm like, there's no reason to try and brainstorm a new name and try and rebrand myself and all of that when I've been art colored glasses like on Instagram and other platforms for such a long time. And so like the idea behind the name was kind of a play off of rose-colored glasses. Um, I tend to be a very optimistic person, so like that also applies to me. But I also like I've been an artist for as long as I can remember. I've been crafting for a very long time. So when I go about my life and about my day, I'm looking at things as like, oh, that would be really cool to paint, or I want to take a picture of that because it just looks really pretty, or I wonder how I could like incorporate this into Tatreez or whatnot, right? Like I'm looking at the world through like literally art colored glasses. And so that's where the name comes from. I'm like constantly inspired by what I see around me. And yeah, that's where that comes from. And also I call myself, I refer to myself as like a multi-talented or multi-hyphenate kind of artist because I do practice different forms of art. Like I really love printmaking. I paint from time to time, and I can't just pick one thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
um, I have narrowed it down to like a few things, but then like I'll learn a new skill and I'll add that, and so I don't know, it evens out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the idea behind art colored glasses and actually forming a business was I was working in marketing, and um, that had never been my intention. Like I studied psychology and women's and gender studies. And I was like, I will never work in marketing. That's like, the evil corporations. I don't want to use psychology for evil.
It's
Um,
true.
and I mean, I ended up like the way I justified it was I was using it for good, right?
There you go.
I was manipulating people to like donate to good causes or, support like Muslim campaigns or different things like throughout my time. And the challenge I was running into with marketing was that I was so stressed all the time, and it didn't matter where I was working or who I was working for. Marketing is just a really stressful job, and there's a lot of uncertainty with it. And also, like being someone who has a chronic illness, it was really hard to be working for other people where I didn't have control over my time or I wasn't able to like take multiple sick days, right? Like if I'm like, I need time to just recover, I need time to rest or whatnot. I didn't have that kind of control over my time. And I was like, I need to figure out something else. I can't keep repeating the same cycle over and over again. Um, and so my business was born. I decided to do like art colored glasses, more like the personal side of things where I was planning to do, a little bit of Tatreez, sell my art, sell some of my designs. Tatreez wasn't like prominent when I originally had the idea for this. I also have a graphic design business, Behja Brands. Legally, it's the same business. It's just I keep it separate, like for branding purposes. Um, but yeah, the Tatreez kind of happened by accident. I was talking to someone locally for graphic design because she was starting a business, and we got to talking about other things and another group that she was involved with. And um, I had mentioned that, oh, I can also do like art workshops or Tatreez workshops. And I had just mentioned it offhand, right? Like, because it was something that I kind of had at the back of my head of like something I'd like to do eventually, maybe. And then she jumped on it. She was like, wait, can you do a Tatreez workshop for me and my sisters and my mother during Thanksgiving break? And I was like, sure, why not? Like, so I started preparing like all the materials, like doing a little bit more research to make sure like all my information is correct, putting it together a presentation, getting the supplies, and I was like, why not do a public workshop as well? Like I'm getting everything prepared. Let me offer this
Mhm.
to the general public and see who bites, right? Like,
Mhm.
is this something that people want? And people got so excited about it, and then I got really excited about it. And this is also how I ended up finding out about like the whole world of botanical dyes because I was looking for alternatives to DMC thread, which
Hmm.
like absolutely no judgment to anyone like who uses DMC. Like I still have a bunch of DMC thread with me, but I was like, if I'm doing a workshop, like I don't want to go and buy a bunch of DMC thread. Like I want to find an alternative because I'm sure everyone listening here knows like the story behind DMC and Nina's petition. Um, but I was just so turned off by it. I was like, I don't want to support DMC. I really want to find an alternative. And so I ended up finding sashiko thread, and then I found botanically dyed sashiko thread, and that's what I ended up ordering. Um, because through my research, I was like, wait, Palestinian women used to dye their own thread,
Hmm.
and this feels more in line with the tradition. And so that's how I did my first workshop. And I've like leaned into that ever since. And for the first workshop, I did actually attempt to dye some thread. I got like one skein of like thread that was prepared for dyeing, and I dyed it with an avocado pit and skin and got a really
Very
nice little
cool.
pink. Yeah.
Okay, so I have like a million
Yeah.
follow-up questions, and I know
Yeah,
Lena
I
does
know.
too. Okay, but the first question I have is, are you teaching people how to do botanical dyeing yet? Has that been
Not
a workshop that
yet,
you've done?
but
Okay.
it's in the works.
Okay, okay,
I'm
okay.
really trying to find more information about the what was traditionally done, which is
Okay.
really hard to find because
Yeah.
almost no one does this anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so I was able to find like some information about like the mordant that they would use, which was alum, which a lot of natural dyers still use today.
Hmm.
But it's also a question of, okay, what kind of alum did they use? What form did it come in? And can I acquire the same form?
Hmm.
Um,
Can you define for our listeners what's a mordant?
yes. So a mordant is essentially what helps the color like stick to the fiber of the fabric or the thread or whatever it is. Because otherwise it might like wash out more quickly or like it'll be more affected by the light. And it's not that like the mordant is going to make it like permanent forever, but it helps the colors stay longer and absorb a little bit more. So like alum, for example, is a lot of times used for brighter colors, whereas there are other mordants like iron, which is literally like you put a rusty nail or something in some water for a few days, and so you have iron water, and that will like sadden or darken colors. I've not tried that yet. I'm a little worried about putting a rusty nail in some water.
Yeah, I
No, don't be
that's
worried. Don't be worried. I was
I don't know,
literally
that scares me too.
No, I was literally talking to I did a collaboration with Fatima who owns Abuelita Fiber Company.
Mhm.
She's based in Virginia and she actually did do that. So what she did was she used cochineal to dye the thread, but then she also did various tests on fabric as well, where she did like a version with iron and another version with something else. I forget what it was that she included, but it's really fascinating to see it. It really does darken the color of the fabric or the color of the thread. But it doesn't seem that scary. I think you should try it. That sounds so
Yeah,
so
I
cool.
will eventually, especially because I'm having a hard time achieving like a true red or green. Those
Mm,
are some of the hardest colors to get. Green you can with indigo, but indigo is also its own separate dye process that
mm.
requires like it's essentially like a chemical reaction. I'm like, I need someone to teach me, and so I
Yeah.
don't like
Yeah,
create an
yeah.
explosion in my kitchen or something.
Oh yeah, no, we don't want that. We definitely don't want that, girl.
Or inhale
Yeah.
some toxic fumes or something. But yeah, I think I'll have to try out the iron at some point if I want to get like a true red.
Okay, interesting. And then can you also tell us about that the research that you just found? Because I just opened it and it looks like it's actually quite recently published.
Yeah, and I hadn't realized it when I was reading it at the time, but when I opened it up again to send to you, I realized, wait, this was published this year in January, like literally
Yeah.
just a few months ago. And some of it like honestly went over my head. Like I don't have like the science background. Like once upon a time, yes, I was really good at chemistry in school, but didn't really progress but beyond like a college level like introductory chemistry class. So the research that I found was done by some researchers at the was it the British Museum?
British Museum, and I
Yeah.
think another entity in France, but I don't remember the name.
Yeah. So obviously the British Museum has a lot of stolen Palestinian thwab or dresses.
Yep.
And at least one of the researchers, I believe, is Lebanese. So like I
Yeah.
was like, that this is great. And this is probably also what prompted it. Um, but they had done a chemical analysis on a couple of like old Palestinian dresses to see what dyes were used and what like fixatives. And I think the goal was to um, have more accurate dating of the dresses because the introduction of synthetic dyes was like a very clear moment in time, right? So if there's synthetic dyes present, then we know it had to be after like, I don't know, 1890 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Not that that's the exact date, but I'm just throwing something
Yeah.
out there. So the dresses that they were analyzing, they still had some botanical dyes and some synthetic dyes or like a mixture of the two with to achieve the same like a single color. Um, so yeah, it did like affirm that's how I like realized okay, alum is what was used. I might have found it in another book as well where it was briefly mentioned. And they also mentioned like madder root and I believe indigo. So there's a lot of information about like what was generally used, like the madder root, like grape leaves or ochre, or all of these things like in various books about Tatreez. But there's basically no information about, okay, what was used as a fixative, what was used like how like what was the actual process, right? Like I
Yeah.
found like very little information about indigo dyeing in Jordan, like in the Jordan Valley. Like there's
Mm.
a specific tribe that or village where their specialty is indigo dyeing. And so their process one is closely guarded, right? Like that's their special secret of like certain parts of the process they just do not share with the public, which I totally
Yeah.
respect. But it's not going to be exactly the same as the indigo dyeing process that I would learn from a random workshop here because they have their own um, like materials that they're going to use to like reduce the vat. I don't understand all of the terms, but
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
right, they are probably using more natural materials as opposed to like something you would pick up from a store. And yeah, it's really hard to find this information about the actual process. Like, yes, it's probably pretty similar around the world, but I'm sure there are like different approaches
Yeah.
to it. Just like with the Tatreez itself, like cross stitch in Palestine is different than cross stitch in Europe.
Yeah.
Same
Mhm.
basic concept is there, but like Palestinians have this emphasis on not wasting anything. So how does that
Mhm.
show up in the dye process? So I've been
Mhm.
trying to like apply like what I know about Palestinian culture, what I know about Tatreez and how Palestinian women operate to my dye process, right? Like reusing some of the water that I use for the mordant, right? So I'm not wasting
Mm.
water. Like I can't
Yeah.
be watering plants with that water because it will kill them. But
Yeah.
like just trying to
Fair.
be creative about like, okay, like using up all the dye pot until like there it's not dyeing anything anymore and not throwing it out just because I don't have anything more to dye. Like I'm gonna go run out to the store and buy something to dye, right? Rather than
Mhm.
throw out the dye pot. Um, so yeah, I feel like I've been piecing together information and assumptions just to kind of try and approach the process that Palestinian women would have once used.
Have you, and sorry, I'm kind of thinking out loud as you're talking about this because I'm getting excited. Have you like explored the opportunity of maybe going somewhere where um dyeing, like these kind of botanical dyeing is a custom and seeing if you can learn kind of some traditional practices that way? Like, is that, I know obviously in Palestine it's really difficult and not really many people, because Lena and I have talked about this too, and it's very difficult with Palestine, but like neighboring countries or anything like that, is that something you've explored?
I mean, it's a thought at the back of my mind. I don't know if I can like one afford it or figure out who to contact or any of
Yeah,
that right now.
totally.
But it's something like on my mind. I did find like an Instagram account of a fiber studio in Egypt that does natural dyes.
Ooh.
So I followed them and
Hmm.
I did find like some information through that. Like um, they had a little bit of information about like madder root and what it's called in Arabic and like
Hmm.
how it might have been used. So I like I said, like piecing together all kinds of information from different places because
Hmm.
like Egypt probably used very similar processes, same as like Syria, because I was actually listening to one of the episodes with Wafat where she mentioned that sometimes the silk thread would be dyed in Syria, sometimes it would be dyed locally.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing that's been on my mind since I started is wanting to not just use the same materials that Palestinians used, but trying to forage locally for
Mm.
plants or things that I can use. And hopefully, like, I'll be able to connect with some of the indigenous, like, crafters and makers here, who could maybe teach me, like, what can be used and where is it okay to forage? Because so far, like the only things I think I've foraged are um, acorns from like the neighbor's tree. And I attempted a little bit with there's like a flower like growing in our backyard that I tried to do something with. I don't think I did it right.
Hmm.
So I might try again at some point. But yeah, I think like what I would want to do first is try and figure out like locally what I can
Hmm.
do as opposed to traveling overseas because what Palestinian women would do is look around them and use what was around them.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to keep that spirit in it with my dye process as much as possible. Like I'm still going to order some some dye materials online,
Yeah.
but I want to try and at least forage some.
I love that. That's
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
And hopefully eventually grow a dye garden myself. So
Ooh, that is
yes.
cool. Yeah.
That's
Well,
really
okay.
cool.
It seems like Tatreez inspired a lot of this interest.
Yes.
How has learning about hand dyeing influenced your Tatreez practice?
I will say quite a bit actually. So right now when I've been like my more recent projects, I'm looking more for the like either hand dyed or botanically dyed thread, and that's what I'm reaching for over the DMC thread that I still have. Not that I don't use that at all, but like a lot of times my preference is for like some of those more natural colors and
Mm.
like honestly, I know some natural dyers really prefer like the very even dye
Yeah.
look, but I like the uneven dye. So like this little project that I'm working on. It's like a little mini tote bag
Hmm.
that I found at an estate sale. It's made out of Ada cloth. I think it's like 15 count. And I only found there were like two of them, and I dyed both of them, and so it has this kind of slightly uneven look to it. And I'm the tortillas that I'm doing on it is it's not botanically dyed, but it is hand dyed silk thread.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I think it's influenced my choices and my style of
Mm.
tortillas quite a bit compared to before. And so I think I'm developing a more distinctive style, whereas before I was like, oh, I like this, I'm going to do this, and it was just all over the place.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's helped me feel more connected to the tradition of tortillas as well, because traditionally women were spinning their thread, dyeing it, and then doing the tortillas, right? Like they weren't like Tatreezing just like the thread didn't just appear from nowhere. Right? So
Yeah.
it's made me appreciate also more like the whole concept of the clean back being it's not about perfection, it's about conserving the thread that you spent so much time making and dyeing and not being wasteful.
Hmm.
And it creates like a certain like level of appreciation for that. Like that's where that comes from. It's not just about like, oh, does it look perfect? It's
Hmm.
am I using every last bit of thread I possibly can? And yeah, not letting it go to waste because I spent so much time working
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
So I think it's helped me feel more connected to that process.
Thank you for validating my craziness with my clean back. Because now I can just say I'm just being sustainable. So I appreciate that. But I also wanted to ask you, um, in relationship to your Tatreez practice and your botanical dyeing and all of that, like how has that how has that influenced how you're in relationship with community? Because earlier you said, and that was one of my other follow-up questions, like about the Tatreez workshop that you did for the public, right? Um, and you kind of started doing that. Like, how is all of that affecting? And you also mentioned wanting to eventually like work with local indigenous makers too. So I'm just curious what journey that's taken you on.
Yeah. So, before, like I mentioned, like Tatreez was something I did on my own, maybe with my sister and my mother, like, and that was pretty much it. It wasn't something I did. It wasn't something I really associated with community aside from like generally being part of like the Palestinian culture, right?
Mhm.
Um, so once I started doing like that first workshop, it connected me to a lot of people. So like we had one of the women who attended is from a Mexican background and practices weaving. And
Mhm.
so like she was kind of bringing in some of her experience and sharing some of her knowledge. And that was a very interesting like cultural exchange that I feel is also true to the spirit of Tatreez and how it was practiced for so many centuries, where it was a conversation between cultures as well, not just within our own culture. And so I've only lived in like so-called Phoenix for like a year and a half or on like I moved honestly I moved here like 2 weeks before October 7th. And so the main way I have even met people since moving here is through activism for Palestine, right?
Wow. Okay.
Um, because otherwise I don't think I would have had like that same motivation or those same opportunities um, to meet people and to form community. Because I was like, wait, my community is not here. I'm separated from my community. I need to do something. Where do I find my people?
Mhm.
And so starting the Tatreez workshops and classes really like, I feel like it was a catalyst to meeting even more people and like really connecting, not just like this like surface level meeting, right? Like, oh, this is someone I met at some event. Like, I was forming closer relationships with people and learning about their own cultural backgrounds, whether they are Palestinian or they were coming from a different cultural background. And from there, like we recently started the Tatreez circles. We've had two so far. We skipped Ramadan, but inshallah, like in April, we'll start up again. And so I feel like Tatreez is now becoming more of this thing that I associate with community and with healing
Mm.
collectively, right? And like something that I'm really trying to be intentional about with the Tatreez circles is not just like talking about nothing, right? Like we're coming to the Tatreez circle to talk about something meaningful. And so I kind of put out some little theme for each month of like the first one we were talking about what was it? I think community care versus like self-care, right? Like
Oh,
what
I
does community care
love.
look like? And I wanted that to be the first one because part of it is, something like a Tatreez circle
Yep.
could be a form of community care. And it's not just this trivial thing that we're doing, but like pretty much everyone who's showing up to these Tatreez circles are also activists who are
Mm.
like, we're all in the same place of being burned out, not sure what to do next. And the Tatreez circle is a way to like take a step back, have that time to heal together, to grieve together, and also to like be in that creative space of,
Mhm.
sometimes like ideas might come up through the context of a Tatreez circle. And like the second one that we did, we talked about like rest, right? Like, is rest earned, or is it something that is a right or that you inherently like have?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I feel like the Tatreez circles, the workshops, and then more recently, I was tabling at the Eid Festival a couple days ago, and that was also an opportunity to meet a lot of people, like especially like Palestinians who practice Tatreez. I'm realizing there's a lot of people from Tul Karam here because I feel like at least 50% of the Palestinians I talked to were like, "Oh, I'm from Tul Karam." And I'm like, "Wait, I've
No
never met other
way.
people from Tul Karam." Um, and like even like some of the like the older khaltos who were stopping by my table and who were like, oh, of course we know how to do tatreez, right? Like everyone knows how to do
Okay.
tatreez.
That's what
Um,
Tata says, though, and I haven't seen any of that Tatreez, so
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So like there are a couple of women who were actually Jordanian, but obviously practiced tatreez because we didn't have those same borders that we now do.
Hmm.
And they had, a lot of information about, okay, like the thobe of Karak is similar to, I'm gonna
Mm.
mess it up. I don't remember which thobe she said, but like which thobes in Jordan correspond to the thwab in Palestine.
Mhm.
So there's that knowledge is there. Like if we just find these people and talk to them, but usually they're
Mhm.
not like out in public except for Eids.
Yeah.
They're like, we're tired. We don't do Tatreez anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why
Um,
community stuff is so important because like
yeah.
similar to you when I was at like after Eid prayer, everyone just hung out and like
Yeah.
all these people I haven't seen in like forever. You only see them during Eid prayer. And like it was interesting talking like there was a number of people I was talking to. And even like some of my friends who were introducing me to people and like one of my friends, she's so funny, she's so sweet. She's like, this is my friend Amani. She does Tatreez. Do you know her? She does Tatreez. Do you want to learn Tatreez? She could teach you. And I was like, oh girl, chill. But it was actually
I have
really
a friend like
cute.
that too.
Right? Like we all do. Girl, I'm that friend sometimes too, I'm not gonna lie. But it was like really cute and really funny. And like as I was like meeting people, like so many people who were like, oh yeah, like I've been meaning to come to the Tatreez circles, or like,
Yes.
oh yeah, I've been wanting to learn Tatreez. Oh, I've been seeing more people post about Tatreez on social media. So it's like I'm such a big proponent of Tatreez circles locally, and people connecting because exactly what you're saying, Farah, is like there is so much knowledge in the community, and a lot of this knowledge isn't written, it's not recorded. But being able to pass it through community is so, so important and a way for us to preserve that knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also like it's like having people at the Tulsi circles or at some of the workshops who do come from different backgrounds, and especially like some of the older generations, because there are the women from Jordan, there are also a couple of women from Syria, for example, like that, like I think in diaspora, we're trying to piece together all this information about what our lives were once like and how
Mm,
our cultures interacted with each other.
hmm.
Um, like some of the Syrians were surprised when I told them like we used to get our silk from Syria, and they're like, "Wait, really?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like, and I think it's really important to have those conversations and to have that like informal time together. That's not just going to the masjid or showing up for a protest. We're not necessarily connecting in those
Hmm.
informal ways.
Yeah, 100% agree. So Farah, what is next for your Tatreez journey? Do you have any projects in the works?
I have a lot of projects all the time, so many ideas.
Relatable,
Same,
relatable.
sis, same.
So right now, like aside from the botanical dyeing, which I'm continuing to explore, I am trying to learn how to spin my own thread. And actually, like again, at the Side Festival, I ran into someone who, like, not Palestinian or Arab or anything, but she knows how to spin thread, and she offered to teach me. And I was like, yes, please. This is like what I've been wanting to do, but I don't know who to go to or who knows how to do this because I feel like the world over, like this is kind of a dying practice of like people might know how to spin yarn, but not necessarily thread because it's slightly different. Um, so there's that. I'm obviously trying to like develop a workshop for the botanical dyeing. And I've also been working on a poetry book, which has been years in the making. I've been like slowly compiling some of my poetry around Palestine, and something was just like not clicking with it, where it felt like, why would anyone want to like buy this poetry book with like personal poems about Palestine? Obviously, some of that is just imposter syndrome speaking, but some of it was like, how is this different than any of the other like poetry books on Palestine? What makes it me, right? Like, what makes it stand out? And as I've been doing more of the Tatreez, like something clicked where I was like, wait, I can combine the Tatreez with the poetry because like to me these things are all linked, right? Like I'm not just a poet or just a Tatreez artist or just a painter or just a printmaker. Like I'm all these things at the same time and I'm always combining these things together. Um, like even like the printmaking and Tatreez, like I'm combining that, right? Like that's natural for me. And so I had this idea to, as I'm like wrapping up this project, to combine the poems with a Tatreez pattern and ideally also like, you know, stitch it myself and have a picture of that along with each poem. Because I also, I mean, I design my own motifs, not just the patterns, but the actual motifs. And so yeah, I just, the thought occurred to me and it just felt like, okay, this is perfect. This is me. This speaks to who I am and how I see the world. And, you know, like if I have a poem that, like I have a poem about Zatad, for example, like that's going to be combined with a Tatreez pattern that represents Zatad, or like I have a Baklawa poem that's going to be combined with a Baklawa, which there's already a ton of like Baklawa motifs. So like not everything will be original, I don't think. Um, but I think combining the poetry and the Tatreez just feels so natural and made it feel like everything was coming together. So inshallah, I'll like eventually get this out into the world. Because like I said, it's been sitting in my drafts for years at this point.
So we need a publisher listening to hit us up. We'll connect you with Farah.
All right. Before we let you go, we always have to ask, what are any major life lessons that you have gained from Tatreez?
I think for me, it's honestly been about perfection. So I know we have this emphasis on like the perfect back and whatnot, but I also, it's never like 100% perfect either, right? Um, there's always going to be like some stray threads or like something that's going diagonal or like something, right? And like there's also this idea that um, like you don't have to fix every mistake, right? Like some mistakes, yes, you absolutely need to fix them, but certain mistakes like aren't really going to affect the final piece, and it's okay to leave them in. And that's how I also teach my workshops of like really helping people overcome that perfectionism, right? Like people will get so stressed out when they make any little mistake. And I'm like, bring it over here. Like, let's see, does this need to be fixed? And if it does, no big deal. We just go back, we fix the mistake, we undo it. It's not a big deal. Like, make a mistake. That's how you learn. And also sometimes the mistake can be left in. It's like it gives it more character, or you work with it, you adjust the design to work with your mistake. Um, and I remember reading, and I wish I remember where I saw this, but something about like sometimes Palestinian women who, even if they had the skill for everything to be perfect, they would deliberately make a mistake. Um, supposedly like because of hasad or like evil eye or whatnot, to like prevent jealousy. But it's just this concept of like, we actually don't want it to be perfect, right? And I have such, I'm a perfectionist, right? I've really struggled with that perfectionism. So being able to be like, no, it's okay if I make a mistake. It's okay if it's not perfect. It's actually better if it's not perfect. Like that's what gives it its character. That's what makes it look handmade. Um, and yeah, so that's been my biggest thing is the perfectionism or like getting away from the perfectionism.
I love that. It's 100% true. Um, 100% agree. Thank you so much, Farah, for joining us. One last thing before we let you go, for real, how can everyone get in touch, follow your work, keep up with all what you're doing? For those in Phoenix, how can they reach out to be a part of your Tatreez circles or workshops? Tell us all of the places.
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Instagram at Art Colored Glasses. And that's also where I post any upcoming like Tatreez circles, workshops, all of that. I might do some things online. We'll see. And you can also find like more information on my website, especially if you want to schedule a workshop that would be more private rather than just attending one of my public workshops. That would be artcoloredglasses.co. Um, and I do also sell some of like my thread. I'll be posting some of my like handmade items as well. Like I've been making these little like polymer clay needle minders. Like I
Yes.
made, I'll show you my Knafit one, um, which is just like
That
this.
is
I
so
don't
So
know.
cute. Okay, we
cute. I
have to,
love
you have to
that.
send a picture so we can
Yes,
post it on
I
social.
absolutely
That's
will.
really cute. I tried
I
playing with polymer clay and I
yeah.
sucked at it, but it's so cute.
Yeah, it takes some practice. So anyways, that was totally off topic. But you can find some of my handmade products, my thread and all of that on Shem's Bazaar, which is a new alternative to Etsy that's Arab owned, BDS friendly, and all of that. I also have it linked on my website and on my Instagram. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Farah. It was such a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I'm so glad we got to chat with Farah. I know you connected with her before, Lena, and you had mentioned her to me. So I was glad we were able to find time to bring her on. It's really, really cool what she's doing with the botanical dyeing and really trying to revive a practice that has unfortunately, because of colonialism, died or is dying in Palestine. So it's really cool. And I'm excited to continue to hear about her journey, especially like once she starts connecting with some local indigenous dyers. And, you know, we talked a little bit about that with her. Even when we got offline, we talked a little bit about that with her. So I'm excited to hear how her journey progresses.
Yeah. And also the research that I asked her to like reference, we'll put it in the show notes. I haven't actually read the whole
Yeah.
thing because I just received it today, but it's really interesting. Like there are a lot of assumptions that I think we make about hand dyeing versus synthetic dyeing, specifically in Palestine and the introduction of DMC. But I don't think we know the whole story. We obviously don't know the whole story. And I don't know, I think there's a lot there that we could potentially figure out or learn together. So I'm so happy that she's exploring it and, we'll share the knowledge as everyone goes. And yeah, I'm excited to see kind of where this takes us because Tatreez has always been a connection to land, and this is just such a natural extension of that by the way that the thread is actually produced and made into these vibrant colors that then get
Mhm.
stitched on these dresses. So
Mhm.
I'm really
I'm sure
excited
we'll
about that.
talk a lot more about it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, until then, thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Tatreez Talk. We want to hear about your Tatreez journeys. So please share your stories with us at tatreeztalk@gmail.com, and we might just have you on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite listening platform and be sure to leave a 5-star review. You can follow me at Lina Stolb, Amani at Min Amani, and of course, follow the pod at Tatreez Talk. We will talk to you soon.